Whenever somebody brings up Game Boy Advance, chances are the first thing you don't think about is fighting games. But surprisingly, there were a lot of fighting games for the Game Boy Advance. One example would be Tekken Advance. Now, this game is essentially a simplified port of Tekken 3, but that's not really a bad thing. Immediately off the bat, you'll notice some graphical differences, mainly in character department. Because, as anybody who's played previous installments of Tekken up to this point know, the game's characters were full 3D models. These ones were replaced with 2D sprites. In terms of sound, you'll hear a lot of tracks that resemble tracks from Tekken 3, which isn't a bad thing because Tekken 3's soundtrack was kick-ass. It's just slightly compressed, but it still sounds really nice for your Game Boy game. Now, one of the biggest simplifications of the game is in controls. Anybody who's played Tekken before knows that it's a 4-button game with left and right punches and kicks. This game only uses 2 buttons, a single punch and a single kick, that can act as left or right depending on the combo or move you're doing. While this may seem like a downfall, especially if you've mastered just some of the really advanced combos of Tekken, it's actually really not bad. The comboing is actually very smooth and responsive, and it's got a lot of depth, surprisingly, for being only 2 buttons. A lot of people who've played Tekken will, as soon as they adapt to only 2 buttons, will feel right at home with the combo system in this game. Another thing that's changed is it also has its own grab button. Instead of pushing 2 buttons to do the grab, you have your own button separately. Now the game has several game modes, including your traditional arcade mode, survival mode, time attack. It's also got training mode if you want to practice some more of the high damage combos in the game. And it also includes its own tag mode, which the system is similar to how it is in Tekken Tag, except it's 3-on-3. Now here's an example of the actual tag mode gameplay. It's not exactly the selling point of Tekken Advance, but it's still pretty fun. The game has only about 9 characters, and those are all the original characters from Tekken 3. But that's not a bad thing. The roster is very well balanced and has enough variety for anybody to play, or pick somebody they like. In terms of challenge, this game does progressively get harder and harder difficulties. It's very good for has easy difficulty for beginners, and you can eventually level up as soon as you master some more techniques in the game. The game modes are fun, and it's got plenty of variety. The fighting system itself is very smooth, and feels just like a Tekken fighting game. It's nothing really to complain about. I was worried when I tried this at first. I was afraid it was going to be oversimplified, or wouldn't be able to do nearly as much as I could do in previous Tekken games. But it's really not a problem. It's actually quite nice. So for being a simplified version of Tekken 3, this game does a pretty good job of entertaining you. And I mean, honestly, it's Tekken on the go. If you're going on a road trip with your family, and it's about 4 hours, you're gonna have the desire to kick some ass at some point. So just pull out the Game Boy Advance and bam, you've got Jin Kazama kicking Ho-Rong in the face. It's definitely a pretty fun, one of the more fun fighting games for the Game Boy Advance. And it's definitely worth checking out if you still have a Game Boy Advance.